25 centuries ago, a man sat beneath a tree asking the same question. Prince Siddhartha had spent years searching for answers to human suffering. Then one night, he stopped searching and simply looked. What he discovered changed everything. He saw that nothing arises by chance, but not because of fate or destiny. He discovered something far more practical. Everything comes from causes and conditions you can actually understand. That moment of crisis you're experiencing, it has causes. That confusion you feel, it arose from conditions. And here's what matters. When you see this clearly, you discover something remarkable. You find freedom. Over the next few hours, we're going to explore this ancient wisdom together, not as philosophy, but as something you can feel in your own life right now. If it feels right, find somewhere comfortable to settle in, somewhere you can simply be still and listen. This is your time. Think about the last time something upset you. Maybe someone said something thoughtless, or a plan fell through. In that moment, it probably felt like the problem just appeared out of nowhere, like life was randomly throwing obstacles at you. But what if that's not how things actually work? The Buddha discovered something so fundamental, so transformative, that he called it the heart of his awakening. He called it pratityasamutpada, dependent origination. And before your mind says, "That sounds complicated," stay with me, because this is the most practical teaching you'll ever encounter. Here's what it means in the simplest terms. Nothing exists on its own. Not one single thing in your life arose independently. Everything, every feeling, every situation, every moment of joy or suffering came into being because of causes and conditions. Imagine dropping a stone into a still lake. The moment it touches the water, ripples spread outward in every direction. Those ripples touch the shore, interact with the wind, merge with other ripples. Each ripple is both an effect of the stone and a cause of new movements in the water. Your life is like that lake. Every action you take, every word you speak, every thought you hold, these are stones dropping into water. The ripples spread in ways you can see and in ways you cannot. They interact with countless other ripples from countless other sources. And from this vast, intricate web of causes and conditions, your experience arises. This isn't poetry. It's not a metaphor for something mystical. The Buddha was describing the actual mechanics of how reality works. When the Buddha first explained this teaching, he wasn't sitting in a temple giving a formal sermon. He was talking to a wanderer named Kalyāṇa, someone genuinely searching for truth. Kalyāṇa had been caught in the same trap so many of us fall into, thinking in absolutes. Either things exist permanently, or they don't exist at all. Either we have total control, or no control at all. Either everything matters, or nothing matters. The Buddha looked at him with compassion and said something revolutionary. He said the world tends to grasp at two extremes: existence and non-existence. But someone who sees with right understanding doesn't get caught in either extreme. They see that when this exists, that comes to be. When this ceases, that ceases. It sounds simple, almost too simple. But hidden in those words is the key to understanding why your life is the way it is right now. Let's make this personal. That anxiety you feel sometimes, it didn't just appear. It arose from conditions, maybe a thought about the future, a memory from the past, tension in your body, lack of sleep, caffeine, a conversation from yesterday. None of these caused the anxiety alone. They came together, they met, and in that meeting, anxiety arose. And here's what changes everything. If anxiety arose from conditions, it will cease when those conditions change. It's not permanent. It's not who you are. It's a weather pattern moving through the sky of your awareness. The same is true for joy, for peace, for every experience you've ever had. Think about a flower growing in a garden. Did the flower create itself? No. It needed a seed, but the seed alone isn't enough. It needed soil, water, sunlight, the right temperature. It needed the gardener who planted it, the rain that fell, the earth that held it. It needed countless causes stretching back further than we can trace. The evolution of flowering plants, the formation of the earth, the light from a star 93 million miles away. The flower is not separate from these conditions. It is these conditions, expressing themselves in the form we call a flower. You are like that flower. Everything you think of as you, your personality, your reactions, your fears and hopes, arose from conditions. Your childhood, your culture, the books you've read, the people you've loved, the losses you've endured, the meals you've eaten, the sleep you've had. Conditions upon conditions upon conditions, reaching back through generations, through time itself. This is not about removing your agency or saying you're helpless. Actually, it's the opposite. When you understand dependent origination, you realize you have more power than you thought, just not the kind of power you imagined. You can't control the ocean, but you can learn to navigate it. You can't stop ripples from moving through the water, but you can choose what stones you drop. Every moment, you're participating in this web of causation. The thoughts you cultivate become the lens through which you see the world. The words you speak become conditions for how others respond to you. The intentions you hold shape the quality of your actions. And all of this creates ripples, some immediate, some that won't manifest for years. The Buddha taught that there are different types of conditions. Some are like roots, fundamental causes that give rise to effects. Some are like supports, necessary conditions without which nothing can arise. Some are like the immediate trigger, the final condition that brings something into being. Think about a fire. You need fuel. That's the root condition. You need oxygen. That's the supporting condition. You need a spark. That's the immediate condition. Remove any one of these, and fire cannot exist. Anger works the same way. The root might be an old wound, a belief about how things should be. The support might be stress, exhaustion, feeling unheard. The spark might be one comment, one moment that tips everything over. Understanding this doesn't make the anger disappear instantly, but it shows you where you can work. You can't always control the sparks life throws at you, but you can remove the fuel. You can reduce the supporting conditions. And when you do, even when sparks fly, the fire doesn't catch. Here's something the Buddha emphasized that often gets missed. This isn't just about your personal experience. Everything is woven together. Your suffering and my suffering aren't separate. When you're in pain, it creates conditions that ripple outward to everyone around you. When you find peace, that peace also radiates. We're not isolated islands of consciousness. We're part of an intricate, living web where everything affects everything else. This is why the Buddha taught that genuine wisdom naturally gives rise to compassion. When you truly see dependent origination, you can't help but understand that we're in this together. The boundary between my suffering and your suffering starts to blur. That driver who cut you off in traffic, their action arose from conditions. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. Maybe they didn't see you. Maybe they're operating from old patterns of aggression that they learned in childhood. This doesn't excuse the action, but it helps you see it clearly. And seeing clearly, you're less likely to add your own stone of anger to the lake, creating more ripples of suffering. The teaching of dependent origination is ultimately a teaching of freedom. When you believe things happen randomly, you feel like a victim of chaos. When you believe everything is predetermined by fate or a cosmic plan, you feel helpless. But when you understand that everything arises from causes and conditions, and that you're constantly participating in creating those conditions, you step into a different relationship with life. You start to see that your choices matter, not because they control everything, but because they're part of the vast web of causation. You become more careful with your thoughts, knowing they create the conditions for future thoughts. You become more conscious of your words, seeing how they ripple out into the world. You pay attention to your actions, understanding that each one plants seeds. And gradually, something shifts. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What conditions gave rise to this?" That question changes everything because it moves you from victimhood to understanding, from helplessness to engagement. The Buddha didn't discover dependent origination through reasoning or philosophy. He saw it directly the way you might suddenly see the pattern in a complex painting. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Life stops looking like a series of random events or predetermined fate and starts revealing itself as a flowing river of causes and conditions, always changing, always responsive. Right now, as you listen to these words, conditions are present. Maybe you're tired or alert. Maybe something in your life is troubling you or bringing you joy. Maybe you're alone or surrounded by others. All of these conditions are shaping how you hear and understand what's being shared. And what you take from this moment will become a condition for future moments, a new way of seeing, a question that lingers, a sense of possibility. You are not separate from this vast web of causes and conditions. You are one of its expressions, just as a wave is an expression of the ocean. And understanding this, really understanding it, not just intellectually but in your bones, this is the beginning of wisdom. Because when you see how everything arises together, you also begin to see how suffering arises. And that's where we're going next. There's a photograph somewhere, maybe in a drawer, maybe on your phone, of a moment you wanted to hold forever. A day when everything felt right. A person you loved. A version of yourself you miss. And if you're honest, there's an ache when you look at it. Not just nostalgia, but something deeper. A quiet grief for what can never return. The Buddha had a word for this universal experience. He called it Anicca, impermanence. And he said it was one of the 3 fundamental characteristics of all existence, not as a pessimistic observation, but as a doorway to freedom. Everything changes. Everything. Your body is changing right now as you listen. Cells dying, new ones forming. Your breath moving in and out, never the same breath twice. Your thoughts arising and dissolving like clouds in a vast sky. The relationships you treasure, the plans you've made, the person you think you are, all of it flowing, shifting, transforming moment by moment. This isn't meant to frighten you. The Buddha wasn't trying to make life feel meaningless or bleak. He was pointing to something we spend enormous energy trying to deny. And that denial is what causes us to suffer. The Buddha used a metaphor that's been repeated for 25 centuries because it captures something so essential. He said you cannot step into the same river twice. Think about that. A river looks like a single solid thing. You can point to it, name it, say, that's the Mississippi, or that's the Mekong. But actually, a river is just water flowing. The water that was there a moment ago has already moved downstream. New water has taken its place. The river is never the same river, even though we call it by the same name. You are like that river. The person you were 10 years ago, are they still here? The cells of your body have replaced themselves. Your thoughts are different. Your beliefs have shifted. Your experiences have shaped you into someone new. And yet we say, I am the same person. We create a sense of solid, unchanging self, where actually there's just flow. This isn't philosophy. This is direct observation of reality. The problem isn't that things change. Change is simply the nature of reality. The problem is that we want things to stay the same. We grasp at moments, trying to freeze them. We cling to people, terrified of losing them. We hold tight to ideas about how life should be, and when reality refuses to cooperate, we suffer. The Buddha taught that this clinging, this thirst for permanence, in a world of impermanence, is the root of dukkha, of suffering. It's like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. The harder you grasp, the more you suffer. There's a story the Buddha's monks told about a young mother named Kalyāṇa-mittatā. She lived in a small village, and her baby son was the light of her life. She poured everything into caring for him, all her love, all her hope, all her dreams for the future. Then one day, her son became ill, and within hours, he died in her arms. Kalyāṇa-mittatā couldn't accept it. She refused to believe her child was gone. She carried his small body through the village, going door to door, begging for medicine that could bring him back to life. People looked at her with pity and sorrow, but no one could help. Finally, someone said, "There's a teacher, the Buddha. Perhaps he can help you." So Kalyāṇa-mittatā went to the Buddha, still holding her dead child. She fell at his feet and pleaded, "Please, give me medicine to cure my son." The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion. He didn't tell her that her son was dead. He didn't lecture her about acceptance. Instead, he said gently, "I can help you. But first, you must bring me a handful of mustard seeds. They must come from a household where no one has ever died." Kalyāṇa-mittatā felt a surge of hope. This seemed like a simple task. She went from house to house, asking for mustard seeds. At the first house, they offered her seeds immediately. "But," she asked, "has anyone in your family ever died?" "Oh yes," they said sadly. "We lost our grandmother last year." She moved to the next house, and the next. Everywhere she went, people were willing to give her mustard seeds. But in every single household, someone had died. A father, a sister, a child, a beloved friend. As the sun set, Kalyāṇa-mittatā finally understood. She found a quiet place and laid her son to rest. Then she returned to the Buddha, and this time, her eyes were different. The wild desperation was gone, replaced by a deep, quiet understanding. "I could not find a single house untouched by death," she said softly. The Buddha nodded. "You thought you were alone in your grief, but death comes to all beings. This is the nature of life. Those who we love, those who we are, all subject to change, to aging, to death. No one escapes this truth. And right there, in the midst of her profound loss, Kisa Gotami found something unexpected. Not the removal of her grief, but a kind of peace within it. An understanding that her suffering was not a personal punishment, but a shared human experience. She became one of the Buddha's followers, and it's said she eventually reached deep liberation. Now, here's what most people misunderstand about impermanence. They think the Buddha was teaching us to expect loss, to brace ourselves for inevitable disappointment, to somehow become cold or detached from life. But that's not it at all. Understanding impermanence isn't about caring less. It's about being fully present with what is here, right now, precisely because it won't last forever. There's a teaching that comes from Zen Buddhism about autumn trees. Watch a tree as fall arrives. Its leaves turn brilliant colors: gold, crimson, amber, a final burst of beauty before they fall. The tree doesn't cling to its leaves. It doesn't suffer as they drop away, one by one. It doesn't try to hold on to summer or resist the coming winter. The tree simply lets go, and in that letting go, there's a kind of grace. The leaves fall, and the tree stands bare and beautiful in its own way. Then spring comes, and new leaves grow, not the same leaves, but new life emerging from the same trunk, the same roots. This is the rhythm of existence. Nothing stays, but nothing is truly lost either. Everything transforms. When you really understand impermanence, not just intellectually, but in your lived experience, it changes how you relate to everything. You stop taking moments for granted. That ordinary Tuesday morning with coffee and sunlight streaming through the window becomes precious because you know it's unrepeatable. The people you love become more dear, not less, because you understand that your time together is limited and therefore sacred. You also stop clinging so desperately to pleasant experiences, trying to make them last forever. You learn to enjoy them fully while they're here, then let them go when they pass. Like holding a butterfly gently in your open palm, appreciating its beauty without grasping, knowing it will fly away, and that's okay. And perhaps most importantly, you develop a different relationship with difficult times. When you're going through something painful, impermanence becomes a refuge. This too will change. This too will pass. Not because you're bypassing the pain or pretending it doesn't matter, but because you understand that it's not permanent, not solid, not the final word on who you are or what your life means. The Buddha taught that there are 3 characteristics that mark all of existence. Impermanence is the first. Everything that arises will cease. Everything that comes together will fall apart. Every beginning contains an ending. This isn't pessimism. it's liberation. Because if everything is impermanent, then your suffering is impermanent too. Your fear is impermanent. Your confusion, your pain, your sense of being stuck, all of it subject to change. Nothing has the power to define you forever, because nothing lasts forever. And right now, in this moment, you can practice with this truth. Notice your breath. It comes in, then it goes out, and that breath is gone, never to return. Another breath arises. Different air, different moment. Your body knows impermanence intimately. Every breath a small death and rebirth. Notice your thoughts. One arises. Worry about tomorrow, maybe, or a memory from yesterday. You don't have to push it away. Just watch it. It appeared from nowhere, and if you don't feed it with attention, it dissolves back into nowhere. Another thought arises to take its place. Thoughts like weather patterns, constantly moving through the sky of awareness. Even this moment of listening, it's already gone. The words you heard 10 seconds ago have vanished. New words are arriving. The person you were when this chapter began is not quite the same person listening now. Something has shifted, even if it's subtle. That's impermanence, happening in real time. The Buddha didn't teach impermanence to make you sad. He taught it to wake you up, to help you stop wasting energy fighting against the nature of reality, to show you that freedom isn't found in making things permanent, but in learning to dance with change, to reveal that the very thing you've been resisting, this constant flow and transformation, is actually the doorway to peace. When you stop demanding that life stand still, you can finally be here for the life that is. And that brings us to something crucial, because if everything is impermanent, if there's nothing solid to grasp, then what about you? What about this sense of I that seems so real, so permanent? That's where the teaching goes even deeper. Have you ever watched someone who seems to get away with everything? They lie, they manipulate, they hurt others, and somehow they seem to thrive. Meanwhile, you try to do the right thing, and life feels like an uphill struggle. It's enough to make you wonder if any of it matters. This is where karma gets misunderstood more than almost any other Buddhist teaching. We've turned it into cosmic scorekeeping, a universe that rewards good people and punishes bad ones. We say things like, karma will get them, or that's bad karma, as if there's some invisible judge keeping tabs. But that's not what the Buddha taught at all. The word karma simply means action. More specifically, it means intentional action. The Buddha used the Pali word cetana, intention, volition, the mental impulse behind what you do. And he said something revolutionary. It's not the action itself that creates karma. It's the intention behind it. This changes everything. Two people can do the exact same thing, say the same words, perform the same gesture, and create completely different karma because their intentions are different. One person helps someone because they genuinely care. Another helps because they want something in return, or to look good, or out of guilt. The external action looks identical. The karmic result is entirely different. The Buddha taught that karma operates through three channels: body, speech, and mind. And of these three, mind is primary because every action of body and speech begins with a mental intention. When you speak harsh words, that creates karma, but the karma was already forming in your mind before your mouth opened, in the moment of anger, in the intention to hurt or defend yourself. When you act with your body, helping someone or pushing past them on a crowded street, the karma is in the intention driving that action. This is why the Buddha said you can create karma even without moving or speaking. A thought of genuine compassion creates karma. A moment of hatred, even if you never act on it, creates karma. The mind is where everything begins. There's a story that doesn't get told as often, but it captures this perfectly. During the Buddha's time, there was a grand ceremony at a temple. Wealthy merchants and nobles came, each trying to outdo the other with their offerings. They brought elaborate lamps made of gold and silver, filled with the finest oils, burning with tall, impressive flames. Each donor announced their gift loudly, making sure everyone saw their generosity. As the evening went on, a poor woman arrived. She had almost nothing. She'd spent her last coins on a single small lamp, simple clay, filled with just enough oil to burn. She felt embarrassed by how humble her offering was compared to the magnificent lamps surrounding the Buddha. But she approached anyway, placed her small lamp among the hundreds of others, and bowed deeply. As she did, her heart filled with pure devotion. She wasn't thinking about being seen or praised. She wasn't comparing herself to others. She was simply offering what she had with complete sincerity, wishing that all beings could find the light of wisdom. The ceremony ended, and everyone went home. The next morning, the monks came to clear away the lamps. One by one, all the elaborate, expensive lamps had burned out during the night. But there, still burning bright and steady, was the poor woman's single, small lamp. The Buddha smiled when he heard this. He explained to his disciples that the size of the offering meant nothing. What mattered was the purity of intention. The wealthy donors had given from ego, from desire for recognition. The poor woman had given from genuine devotion. Her small lamp carried more merit than all the golden ones combined. This is karma, not some cosmic calculator, measuring the dollar value of your good deeds, not a system of punishment and reward, but the natural consequence of intention meeting action. Think about it in your own life. When you help someone because you genuinely want to ease their burden, how does that feel? in your body. There's a kind of warmth, an opening, even if the person never thanks you, even if no one sees what you did. Something in you feels more spacious, more at peace. That's karma creating its result in real time. But when you help someone while resenting it, or because you feel obligated, or because you want them to owe you, even though you're doing a good deed, notice what happens inside you. There's tension, maybe irritation, a sense of burden. The external action is helping, but the internal result is suffering. That's also karma. The Buddha was very clear that karma is not fate. It's not predestination. Yes, your past actions have created conditions that affect your present experience. But right now, in this moment, you're creating new karma. You're planting new seeds, and those seeds will shape future conditions. The past influences the present, but it doesn't imprison you. This is radically empowering when you really understand it. You might not be able to change what happened yesterday or last year. You can't undo the karma you've already created. But right now, this moment, you have a choice about what intentions you're cultivating, what actions you're taking, what seeds you're planting. If you've been living with patterns of anger, you've probably noticed they tend to perpetuate themselves. Anger becomes a habit. Your mind gets grooved into reactivity. That's karma at work. Each moment of anger makes the next moment of anger more likely. But it's not locked in. The moment you recognize what's happening and choose differently, even if just once, you're creating a new condition, a new possibility. The same is true for any pattern in your life. Why do you keep finding yourself in similar situations? Similar relationships that end the same way? Similar problems at work? It's not because the universe is conspiring against you or because you're cursed. It's because you're carrying habitual intentions, habitual ways of responding that keep creating similar conditions. The Buddha called these saṃsāra, mental formations, habitual patterns that shape how you perceive and respond to life. They're like grooves in a path that water naturally flows into. The more times water flows that way, the deeper the groove becomes. But you can create new grooves. You can redirect the flow. This is why the Buddha emphasized present moment awareness so strongly, because right now is where karma is being created. Not in the past, which is already gone. Not in the future, which doesn't exist yet. But here, in this immediate moment, in the quality of your intention and attention. When you're aware, really aware, of what's happening in your mind, you gain the ability to choose your response rather than just reacting automatically. You see the impulse of anger arise, and instead of instantly speaking from it, there's a gap, a space where wisdom can operate. That gap is where freedom lives. It's important to understand that karma isn't always immediate. Some seeds sprout quickly. Some take years. even lifetimes according to Buddhist teaching. This is why things can seem unfair in the short term, why people who cause harm might appear to prosper, while good people struggle. But the Buddha taught that karma ripens in its own time, according to conditions. You don't need to worry about tracking it all, keeping score, or trying to calculate the karmic math of your life. That would be exhausting and pointless. Instead, the practice is simpler. Pay attention to your intentions. Notice what's motivating your actions. Are you operating from greed, hatred, or delusion? Or from generosity, compassion, and wisdom? That's all you need to know. There's a beautiful phrase in the Dhammapada, a collection of the Buddha's teachings. It says, "Mind precedes all phenomena. Mind matters most. Everything is mind, made." Your intentions are shaping your world right now, in ways both subtle and profound. Take a moment. Just pause with me here. Notice one intention you're holding right now. It might be as simple as the intention to understand, or the intention to find peace, or maybe there's frustration, or hope, or tiredness. Just notice it. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it. Just see it clearly. That intention, whatever it is karma in formation. It's creating conditions for the next moment, and the moment after that. And here's the profound part. Simply by seeing it clearly, you've already changed it. Awareness itself transforms karma. The Buddha taught that understanding karma doesn't mean becoming hypervigilant or paranoid about every thought and action. It's not about perfect behavior or never making mistakes. It's about developing a quality of consciousness where you're increasingly aware of the intentions behind your actions and increasingly able to align those intentions with what's wholesome, what leads to less suffering for yourself and others. This is practical wisdom for daily life. It means the next time you're about to speak, pause for just a breath and check your intention. Are you speaking to be right or to be helpful? Are you acting from fear or from clarity? Are you grasping or offering? These small moments of checking in, they're not small at all. They're how you gradually redirect the entire trajectory of your life. And the beautiful thing about karma is that it's never too late. No matter what you've done in the past, no matter what patterns you've created, this moment is fresh. This moment offers a new choice. The seeds you plant right now will grow. What do you want to cultivate? Because karma isn't fate, it's possibility. It's the law that says your choices matter, your intentions have power, and change is always available. Not someday, not after you fix everything else, but now, in the quality of awareness you bring to this present moment. And speaking of this moment, there's something else the Buddha saw with perfect clarity, something about the nature of the one who's making all these choices, having all these intentions, something that, when you see it, transforms everything. Let's pause here for just a moment. Feel your body, wherever you are right now. Notice your breath, just one full breath in and one full breath out. What the Buddha taught next reveals why we suffer and, more importantly, how we can be free. There's a particular kind of pain that has nothing to do with physical injury. It's the ache of wanting something you can't have, the anxiety of trying to keep something that's slipping away, the restless feeling that this moment, this life, isn't quite enough. The Buddha had a word for this. He called it Tanhā, often translated as craving or thirst, and he identified it as the root cause of human suffering. This is the second noble truth, and it's worth understanding deeply because it's both the diagnosis of our pain and the pointer toward freedom. Tanhā isn't just wanting things. It's a deeper, more pervasive thirst, a constant leaning away from what is toward what we wish were true. It's the mind that's never quite satisfied, always seeking, always grasping, always trying to arrange life into a more comfortable configuration. The Buddha described 3 types of craving. First, there's craving for sensory pleasure, the pull toward anything that feels good, not just obvious things like food or physical comfort, but also pleasant experiences, nice words, beautiful sights, anything that creates a hit of satisfaction. This craving isn't wrong or bad, but notice what happens when you get what you want. The satisfaction doesn't last. Soon, you're hungry again, restless again, wanting the next thing. Think about eating your favorite meal. The first few bites might be wonderful, but by the end, the pleasure has already faded. You're full, but the craving doesn't stop. It just shifts to something else. Maybe now you want dessert, or you're already thinking about tomorrow's pleasure. The nature of sensory craving is that it can never be fully satisfied because pleasant sensations, by their nature, are impermanent. This is why buying things rarely brings lasting happiness. You want something, maybe new clothes, a better phone, a nicer home. You believe getting it will make you happy, and for a moment, maybe it does. But soon the novelty wears off, and the wanting mind is already looking for the next thing. It's not that having nice things is wrong. It's that looking to them for lasting satisfaction is like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. Second, there's craving for existence, the deep desire to be, to become, to establish yourself as someone. This is the drive behind ambition, the need for recognition, the endless project of building and maintaining an identity. I want to be successful, respected, loved, remembered. Again, nothing wrong with growing or achieving, but underneath is often this anxious grasping, a fear that without these things, you'll somehow cease to matter. This kind of craving shows up in subtle ways. The need to be right in an argument isn't really about the facts. It's about maintaining an image of yourself as intelligent or knowledgeable. The discomfort when someone doesn't recognize your contribution isn't about fairness. It's about the craving to be seen, to exist in others' awareness. We're constantly trying to shore up this sense of self, to make it solid and permanent, even though the Buddha taught that this very project is what creates suffering. Notice how much energy goes into maintaining your image of who you are. You dress a certain way, speak a certain way, carefully curate what others see. You feel anxious when that image is threatened. You feel elated when it's confirmed. All of this is craving for existence, the desperate attempt to be someone solid and permanent in a world where everything is fluid and changing. Third, and perhaps most subtle, is craving for non-existence, the wish to escape, to not be, to make uncomfortable things disappear. This shows up as avoidance, numbing, the desperate desire for pain to end. Sometimes it's literal, the exhausted thought, I just want this to be over. Sometimes it's more subtle, distracting yourself from difficult feelings, rushing past the present moment towards some imagined future where things will be better. You can see this craving in how we relate to boredom or discomfort. The moment something becomes unpleasant or unstimulating, we reach for our phones, turn on the television, eat something, do anything to escape the present experience. We're craving non-existence of this moment, this feeling, this reality as it is. This craving for non-existence also appears in how we relate to parts of ourselves we don't like. I wish I wasn't so anxious. I hate that I'm like this. I want this part of me to just disappear. But what we resist persists, as the saying goes. The attempt to annihilate parts of your experience only gives them more power. All three forms of Tanhā have something in common. They're fighting against reality, as it is. The Buddha wasn't saying you shouldn't enjoy pleasant things or have goals or want relief from pain. He was pointing to something more subtle, the way we grasp at these experiences, trying to freeze them in place or push them away, creating a constant tension between what is and what we want to be. There's a teaching attributed to the Thai forest master Ajahn Chah that captures this perfectly. He would hold up a beautiful glass and say, "I love this glass. It holds water perfectly. The light catches it in lovely ways. And to me, this glass is already broken." His students would look confused. The glass was clearly intact, sitting right there in his hand. He'd continue, "I enjoy this glass now, but I understand that someday, maybe today, maybe years from now, it will slip from a hand or get knocked off a shelf, and it will shatter. When I understand this, I can appreciate the glass fully in this moment, without the suffering of clinging to it. And when it does break someday, I can say, of course." This is love without attachment. It's not that you stop caring, or become cold and distant. It's that you hold things lightly, with open hands instead of clenched fists. You enjoy the glass while it's here, or the relationship, or the phase of life, or the moment of happiness, knowing it won't last forever, and that's okay. The teaching of the already broken glass applies to everything in your life. Your health is already compromised. Aging is happening right now. Your relationships are already changed. Every conversation shifts things. Every day brings new conditions. Even your sense of self is already dissolving and reforming moment by moment. When you see this clearly, you can appreciate what's here without the desperate clinging that turns appreciation into anxiety. The difference between love and clinging is subtle but crucial. Love says, I care about you, I want you to be happy, I value our connection. Clinging says, I need you to stay exactly as you are forever, because without you, I'll fall apart. Love has space in it, room to breathe. Clinging is tight, anxious, controlling. You can feel the difference in your body. When you're with someone you love without attachment, there's ease, openness, appreciation. When you're clinging, there's tension, fear of loss, a constant checking. Are they still there? Do they still care? Will this last? The same applies to everything in life. You can work toward goals without being attached to specific outcomes. You can appreciate your health without being terrified of aging. You can enjoy this moment without desperately trying to make it permanent. Think about your own life right now. What are you grasping at? Maybe it's a relationship you're afraid of losing. Maybe it's an image of yourself you're trying to maintain. Maybe it's a situation you're desperately trying to change, or one you're clinging to, afraid of what comes next. Can you feel that grasping? It's often a tightness in the chest, a restlessness in the mind, a quality of leaning forward or pulling back instead of being here. The Buddha taught that this grasping itself is the problem, not the thing you're grasping at. You could have everything you want, and Tanhā would just find something new to grasp. You could lose everything, and Tanhā would grasp at the wish for things to be different. The content changes, but the grasping remains. This is why trying to arrange your external circumstances perfectly will never bring lasting peace. As long as there's craving, there's suffering, not because you can't get what you want, but because wanting itself creates a gap between you and reality, and in that gap, suffering lives. But here's the profound part. Craving is not who you are. It's a habit, a pattern that arose from conditions. And like all conditioned things, it can be seen, understood, and released. When you recognize craving arising, right there in the moment, before you believe its story or follow its pull, something shifts. There's a space between the craving and your response to it. In that space, freedom is possible. You don't have to fight the craving or judge yourself for having it. just see it clearly. There's wanting. There's the pull towards something pleasant. There's resistance to what is. Seeing it clearly is enough. It loosens the grip. The Buddha wasn't asking you to eliminate all desires or live like a stone. He was inviting you to see how much suffering you create through unnecessary grasping, and to discover the peace that comes when you can engage with life fully without that desperate clinging. You can still prefer health to sickness, connection to loneliness, ease to struggle, but you don't need to grasp at those preferences so tightly that the natural flow of life becomes a source of constant anxiety. This understanding brings tremendous relief, because it means your peace doesn't depend on getting everything you want or avoiding everything you fear. It depends on your relationship with wanting and fearing, and that's something you can actually work with. And this brings us to something even more fundamental, because if craving is the root of suffering, we need to understand suffering itself more deeply. The Buddha said something radical about pain that most spiritual teachings avoid. He didn't promise to remove it. He didn't say that awakened people never experience difficulty. What he said was this: there's pain, and then there's suffering, and they're not the same thing. Dukkha is the Pali word most often translated as suffering, but it means something broader and more subtle. It includes obvious suffering, pain, loss, grief, but it also includes the dissatisfaction lurking beneath even pleasant experiences, the way nothing quite settles, the subtle stress of trying to hold it all together. The first noble truth is simple. Dukkha exists. Life contains difficulty. Your body ages, gets sick, eventually dies. You lose people you love. Things don't go as planned. Even joyful moments carry a whisper of impermanence, the knowledge that they won't last. This isn't pessimism, it's honesty. And the Buddha's point wasn't to make you depressed. It was to stop you from wasting energy, pretending pain shouldn't exist, or that you can live in permanent comfort if you just arrange things correctly. Most of us operate under an unexamined assumption that life should be comfortable, that suffering is a mistake, that if we're experiencing pain, something has gone wrong. But the Buddha said no. Dukkha is woven into the fabric of conditioned existence. It's not a bug, it's a feature. And recognizing this doesn't make you a pessimist. It makes you realistic, which is the foundation for genuine peace. There's a teaching from the Salatha Sutta, the Sutra of the Arrow, that explains this beautifully. The Buddha said, when an untrained person experiences pain, it's like being struck by an arrow. Then, because they don't understand what's happening, they shoot themselves with a second arrow, worrying about the pain, resenting it, telling stories about how unfair it is, spinning out into anxiety about the future, or regret about the past. So they suffer twice, once from the actual pain, and again from their reaction to it. But a trained person experiences the first arrow and stops there. They feel the pain, physical or emotional, but they don't add the second arrow of resistance and story making. The pain is painful, yes, but it's not compounded by layers of suffering about the pain. Think about the last time you experienced physical discomfort, maybe a headache or your back hurting after sitting too long. The actual sensation has a certain quality and intensity, but notice how much your mind adds to it. This shouldn't be happening. Why now? What if it gets worse? I hate this. All of that is the second arrow. The same thing happens with emotional pain. Sadness arises. That's the first arrow. Then comes the story. I shouldn't feel this way. Something's wrong with me. This means I'm broken. Will this ever end? Now you're suffering about your suffering, and that second layer often hurts more than the original feeling. The Buddha's teaching isn't about removing the first arrow. That's part of being human, being alive in a body that feels, in a life that changes. The teaching is about not shooting yourself with the second arrow. And here's where it gets really interesting. He taught that suffering has a purpose, not in some cosmic everything happens for a reason sense, but in a very practical way. It wakes you up. When life is comfortable, when everything's going smoothly, it's easy to drift along on autopilot, not questioning anything, not looking deeply at how you're living. But when something hurts, when something breaks, when you come face to face with dukkha, suddenly you're paying attention. Suddenly you're motivated to understand what's actually going on. The Buddha himself is proof of this. He was a prince, living in luxury, protected from all difficulty, but that comfort kept him asleep to reality. Only when he encountered sickness, aging, and death, only when he faced dukkha directly, did his spiritual journey begin. Suffering was the catalyst for his awakening. There's a Zen teaching about a butterfly struggling to emerge from its cocoon. Someone watching felt compassion for the butterfly's struggle and decided to help by carefully cutting open the cocoon. The butterfly emerged easily, but its wings were shriveled and weak. It never learned to fly. The struggle of pushing through the cocoon is what forces fluid into the butterfly's wings, giving them the strength they need. Without that difficulty, without that necessary struggle, the butterfly can't become what it's meant to be. Your difficulties work the same way. Not every struggle is necessary. The Buddha wasn't glorifying pain, but the struggles you do face, especially the ones you can't avoid, have the potential to strengthen something in you that comfort never could. Every time you face difficulty without collapsing or running away, you're building capacity. You're learning that you can hold discomfort without it destroying you. You're discovering resources you didn't know you had. You're developing the kind of wisdom that only comes through direct experience. The Buddha taught that dukkha has 3 distinct forms, and understanding all 3 is crucial. First is dukkha, ordinary suffering. This is pain, loss, grief, the obvious forms of dukkha that everyone recognizes. A toothache, the death of someone you love, physical illness, emotional anguish. This is the first arrow we've been talking about, the unavoidable pain that comes with having a body and heart. Second is viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. Even pleasant things don't last, and their impermanence creates a subtle dissatisfaction. You finally get what you want, and either it doesn't satisfy you the way you hoped, or you immediately fear losing it. A beautiful sunset is tinged with the knowledge it's already fading. A moment of joy carries within it the seeds of its own ending. This isn't about being negative. It's about seeing clearly that pleasure based on impermanent conditions can never provide lasting satisfaction. Think about falling in love. In the beginning, everything feels perfect, transcendent, but beneath the joy, there's often a subtle anxiety. Will this last? What if they change? What if I lose them? That anxiety is viparinama dukkha, the suffering inherent in knowing that all conditioned things must change. Third is saṅkhāra dukkha, the suffering inherent in conditioned existence itself. This is the most subtle and the most profound. Everything that arises from causes and conditions carries a fundamental unsatisfactoriness because it's impermanent and not truly under your control. Even neutral experiences, even moments where nothing seems particularly wrong, carry this quality of incompleteness, of not being quite enough. The Buddha didn't promise enlightenment would mean you'd never feel pain again. He promised you'd understand it differently. You'd see it as it is, a changing condition, not a solid truth about your life. You'd stop taking it personally, stop building an identity around it, stop letting it define you. There's a difference between I am suffering and suffering is present. The first makes suffering into your identity, something solid and permanent. The second recognizes it as a temporary visitor, a weather pattern passing through. When you're in the middle of something difficult right now, and maybe you are, this might seem like empty philosophy, but stay with it. Can you feel the difference between the actual sensation or emotion and all the thoughts you're adding to it? Can you locate the first arrow separate from the second? Understanding this doesn't make you immune to pain, but it transforms your relationship with it. Instead of seeing difficulty as evidence that something's wrong with you or your life, you see it as part of the natural flow of existence. Everyone experiences this. It's not personal. And when pain isn't personal, when it's not a problem that needs to be fixed before you can be okay, something remarkable happens. The pain is still painful, but there's space around it. room to breathe. And in that space, you discover you're larger than any pain you're experiencing. The refining fire of dukkha burns away what's false, the stories, the identities, the certainties you thought you needed. What remains is more real, more resilient, more free. Think of it like this. Gold becomes pure through fire. The heat doesn't destroy the gold. It burns away the impurities, revealing what was always there beneath. Dukkha works the same way in your life. It strips away what isn't essential, what isn't real, leaving only what's true. But this doesn't mean you should seek out suffering or celebrate it when it comes. The Buddha's path is about balance, which brings us to perhaps his most essential teaching. Before the Buddha was the Buddha, he was a seeker named Siddhartha, trying everything to find liberation. He practiced extreme asceticism, barely eating, pushing his body to the edge of death, believing that punishing the flesh would free the spirit. After 6 years of this, he was emaciated, weak, and no closer to understanding. One day, sitting by a river, he heard a boat passing by. On the boat, a music teacher was instructing his student about tuning a stringed instrument. If you tighten the string too much, it will break, the teacher said. If you leave it too loose, it won't play. Something clicked for Siddhartha. He realized he'd been living at extremes. First luxury and indulgence in the palace, then harsh denial and asceticism in the forest. Neither extreme led to freedom. The path must lie somewhere in between. He accepted food from a village girl, regained his strength, and sat down under a tree to practice with a different approach, not forcing, not avoiding, but finding balance. That night, he awakened. In his very first teaching after enlightenment, he spoke about this middle way. He said there are 2 extremes to avoid on the spiritual path. One is the pursuit of pleasure and sensory indulgence, believing happiness comes from getting what you want. The other is the pursuit of harsh self-denial, believing happiness comes from rejecting what you want. Both miss the point. The middle way isn't about finding a compromise between 2 extremes. It's about recognizing that the extremes themselves are the problem. It's a different way of relating to experience entirely, one that doesn't grasp or push away, but meets what is with clear seeing and appropriate response. This shows up everywhere in life. Think about how you relate to your own mind and emotions. One extreme is drowning in them, believing every thought, following every impulse, completely identified with every feeling that arises. The other extreme is trying to suppress everything, pushing away uncomfortable emotions, denying what you feel, attempting to transcend your humanity through force of will. The middle way is neither drowning nor suppressing. It's feeling what you feel without becoming it, noticing thoughts without believing their absolute truth, having emotions without letting them drive all your actions. There's space in the middle, room to be fully human and fully aware at the same time. There's a Zen story about a monk who lived near the ocean. One day, watching swimmers struggle against the waves, he noticed something. Those who fought the waves exhausted themselves and barely moved forward. Those who gave up entirely were pulled out to sea by the current. But those who understood the water, who moved with some waves, dove under others, used the current's power while maintaining direction, they moved through the water with grace. Life is like that ocean. You can't control the waves. Fighting them depletes you. Surrendering completely leaves you at their mercy. But there's a third option: learning to work with what comes, responding skillfully, finding your way through without exhausting yourself in resistance or losing yourself in passivity. The middle way requires discernment, knowing when to act and when to accept. Sometimes the wise response is to change what you can. Sometimes it's to accept what you cannot change. The art is distinguishing between them. And that distinction isn't always obvious or simple. There's wisdom in the prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That wisdom, knowing the difference, is what the middle way cultivates. The Buddha taught something called right effort as part of the Eightfold Path. Right effort doesn't mean trying hard all the time or pushing through everything with willpower. It means applying energy appropriately. Sometimes that's vigorous action. Sometimes it's gentle patience. Sometimes it's simply not interfering with what's naturally unfolding. Right effort has 4 aspects in Buddhist teaching. First, the effort to prevent unwholesome states that haven't yet arisen. This isn't about suppression. It's about creating conditions that don't feed greed, hatred, or delusion. Second, the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Again, not through force, but through understanding and letting go. Third, the effort to cultivate wholesome states that haven't yet arisen, deliberately nurturing qualities like compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom. Fourth, the effort to maintain and strengthen wholesome states that are already present. Think about trying to heal from an injury. Too much rest and your muscles atrophy. Too much activity and you re-injure yourself. Healing requires finding that middle place. Enough rest to recover. Enough movement to maintain strength. Sensing day by day what's needed. Emotional and spiritual healing work the same way. You can't force yourself to let go of grief or pain, but you also can't just wallow in it indefinitely. There's a middle way of feeling what needs to be felt, while also engaging with life, honoring your pain while not letting it become your entire identity. The middle way isn't passive or neutral. It's actually quite dynamic. It's constantly adjusting, constantly responding to changing conditions. Like riding a bicycle, You're always making small corrections to stay balanced, never perfectly still, but never falling over either. In meditation practice, you see this clearly. If you try too hard to concentrate, you create tension, and the mind rebels. If you don't try at all, you fall into drowsiness or distraction. The middle way in meditation is alert but relaxed, focused but not strained, a quality of effortless effort that paradoxically comes through practice. The Buddha used another metaphor for this. He said right effort is like carrying a bowl of oil filled to the brim. You must walk carefully enough not to spill it, but not so rigidly that you trip. Too much effort creates tension. Too little creates carelessness. The middle way is attentive presence without strain. Right now, wherever you are in your life, you can practice this. Notice if you're leaning into one extreme or another. Are you pushing too hard, trying to force something that needs time? Or are you avoiding something that needs your attention? Are you grasping at what you want, or running from what you fear? The middle is often uncomfortable because it doesn't give you the false comfort of certainty. Grasping feels like doing something. Avoiding feels like protecting yourself. But the middle, this open, responsive awareness, requires you to sit with not knowing, to trust the process, to be present without controlling. And that brings us to why you keep finding yourself in the same situations, facing the same struggles. Because there's a cycle happening, and until you see it clearly, you'll keep going around and around. Have you noticed how the same problems keep showing up in different forms? Different people, different circumstances, but somehow the same essential struggle. The Buddha called this Saṃsāra, the cycle of repeated patterns. Usually it's discussed in terms of rebirth across lifetimes, but it's just as relevant in understanding why your life feels stuck in certain grooves. You don't need to believe in reincarnation to see Saṃsāra at work. It's happening in your day-to-day life, maybe even moment to moment. The same reactions, the same stories, the same ways of responding to stress or intimacy or challenge, cycling through again and again. This isn't your fault, and it's not a character flaw. It's how the mind works. The Buddha taught about saṅkhāra, mental formations, habitual patterns that get deeply grooved into your way of being. Think of them like paths through a forest. The more times you walk the same route, the clearer the path becomes, until eventually you follow it without even thinking. Your patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting are like this. Maybe you always respond to criticism with defensiveness. Maybe you shut down when conflict arises. Maybe you repeat the same relationship dynamics with different partners. Maybe you sabotage yourself right when things start going well. These aren't random. They're conditioned responses that arose from past experiences and then reinforced themselves through repetition. Each time you react the same way, you strengthen that pattern, making it more likely you'll react that way again. The Buddhist image for this is the bhavacakra, the wheel of becoming. At its center are three animals representing the forces that keep the wheel turning: a pig for ignorance, a snake for aversion, and a rooster for craving. These three keep you cycling through the same experiences over and over. Ignorance means not seeing clearly, acting on autopilot, not understanding the consequences of your actions, missing the patterns, even as you repeat them. It's like walking through life with blinders on, making the same choices again and again without noticing the results they create. Aversion means pushing away what's uncomfortable, running from difficult feelings, avoiding necessary conversations, denying what's true because it's painful to face. But what you resist doesn't disappear. It just shows up in different forms until you finally turn and face it. Craving means grasping at what feels good, chasing the next hit of pleasure or validation, believing happiness is just around the corner if you can get what you want. But satisfaction based on getting what you crave never lasts, so the cycle continues. Notice if this pattern sounds familiar. Something triggers you, maybe a small criticism or disappointment. Immediately, without conscious thought, your habitual response kicks in. Maybe you get defensive and lash out. Then you feel bad about lashing out, which triggers more reactivity. Now you're caught in a spiral, and before you know it, you've created the very conflict or disconnection you were trying to avoid. That's Saṃsāra in real time. The Buddha used a striking metaphor that appears in the Pali Canon. He said going back to old patterns of suffering is like a dog returning to its own vomit. Harsh image, but accurate. We know certain thoughts or behaviors make us miserable, yet we keep returning to them, almost compulsively. Why do we do this? Because the pattern is familiar, and familiarity feels safer than the unknown, even when the familiar is painful. Because we don't see the pattern clearly while we're in it. Because the momentary relief or satisfaction we get from following the pattern blinds us to its long-term consequences. There's also something the Buddha called papanicca, mental proliferation, the way one thought spawns 10 more, which spawn 100 more. You have one worry, then you worry about the worry, then you worry about the fact that you're always worrying. One thought of anger leads to memories of past grievances, fantasies of revenge, judgments about yourself for being angry. Before you know it, you're lost in a mental storm that started with one small trigger. Breaking free from Saṃsāra requires what the Buddha called right understanding, seeing clearly how these patterns operate, seeing the chain of cause and effect that keeps them going. The chain works like this. Ignorance leads to formation of patterns, which lead to consciousness taking a particular shape, which leads to certain perceptions, which lead to contact with experience, which leads to feeling, which leads to craving, which leads to grasping, which leads to becoming, which leads to more suffering. And around it goes. But here's the crucial insight. You can interrupt this chain at any point. You don't have to let it run its full course. The moment you recognize what's happening, oh, this is the pattern again, you've created a gap. In that gap of awareness, choice becomes possible. You're no longer on autopilot. The old path is still there, worn and familiar, but now you can see it, and seeing it, you can choose differently. This doesn't mean the pattern disappears overnight. These grooves are deep, but each time you choose differently, you weaken the old pattern and strengthen a new possibility. You're literally rewiring your responses, creating new paths through the forest. The Buddha taught that liberation from Saṃsāra isn't about perfection or never making mistakes. It's about seeing clearly, responding wisely, and not getting caught in endless repetition. It's about learning from experience instead of just repeating it. And the tool for all of this, for seeing clearly, for interrupting patterns, for finding freedom, is presence itself. Everything we've explored so far points to one practice: being here, now, with what is. The Buddha called this Sati, often translated as mindfulness or awareness. But it's not just a technique you do for 20 minutes on a cushion. It's a way of being that transforms everything. The Buddha taught 4 foundations of mindfulness, Satipatthāna, as a direct path to freedom from suffering. These aren't abstract concepts. They're specific ways of paying attention that, when practiced consistently, untangle you from the habits that cause pain. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. This means feeling what it's actually like to inhabit your body, not as an idea but as direct sensation. Right now, can you feel your feet, your hands, the weight of your body wherever you're sitting or standing? Most of the time we're so lost in thought we barely notice we have a body until it hurts. The Buddha taught a specific practice called Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, not controlling the breath, not making it special, just feeling it as it is. The sensation of air moving in through your nose or mouth, filling your lungs, then releasing out again. Try it right now, just for 3 breaths. Bring your attention to your breathing. In and out. In and out. In and out. What happened? Did your mind wander? Did you notice thoughts pulling your attention away? That's not a problem. That's what minds do. The Buddha called it Citta, the monkey mind, jumping from branch to branch, never still. The practice isn't to stop thoughts. It's to notice when attention has wandered and gently bring it back, again and again. Each time you bring it back, you're training a new capacity, the ability to be present instead of lost in thought. Why the breath? Because it's always happening, always here, always available, as an anchor to the present moment. Your breath doesn't exist in the past or future, only now. When you're with your breath, you're with reality as it actually is. The Buddha taught that you can expand this practice to include all aspects of the body. Walking meditation, feeling each step, the heel touching down, the weight shifting, the foot lifting. Eating meditation, noticing the colors, textures, flavors, the act of chewing, swallowing. Even mundane activities like washing dishes or brushing your teeth become opportunities for presence when you bring full attention to the sensations involved. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings. Not emotions exactly, but the quality of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral that accompanies every experience. When you taste something, there's immediately a subtle feeling tone. Pleasant if you like it, unpleasant if you don't, neutral if it doesn't register strongly. The same with every sight, sound, thought, sensation. Why does this matter? Because the Buddha taught that craving and aversion arise at this level. You feel something pleasant and immediately want more of it. You feel something unpleasant and immediately want it gone. This happens so fast, you usually don't notice it. But if you can catch it at this stage, just observing pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling without immediately grasping or pushing away, you interrupt the chain that leads to suffering. The third foundation is mindfulness of mind states, noticing when your mind is angry, calm, distracted, focused, contracted, spacious. Not judging these states, not trying to change them, just recognizing them clearly. Anger is present, peace is present, confusion is present. This creates crucial space. Instead of, I am angry, which makes anger your identity, you see, anger is present, which recognizes it as a temporary visitor. The difference might seem subtle, but it changes everything about how you relate to your experience. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of Dhammas, mental phenomena, patterns, the teachings themselves arising in your direct experience. This is where you start to see impermanence, see dependent origination, see how craving arises and passes away, not as intellectual concepts, but as lived reality. All four foundations have one thing in common. They anchor you in the present moment. Because here's the deepest truth the Buddha taught about time. The past is gone, the future hasn't arrived, and all we ever have is now. Your suffering almost never exists in the present moment itself. Right now, in this very instant, are you okay? Not thinking about what happened or what might happen. Right now, is there breath in your body, ground beneath you, life flowing through you? Usually, yes. The crisis is in your thoughts about past or future, not in the actual present. The Buddha taught that past and future are mind-made constructions. Memory and imagination, both useful tools, but not the same as reality. When you're lost in thoughts about yesterday or tomorrow, you're not actually here. You're in a mental movie, and that movie is where most suffering happens. Presence breaks the chain of dependent origination. When you're truly present, you see thoughts arising before you believe them. You feel emotions before you become them. You notice impulses before you act on them. There's space, and in that space, wisdom can operate instead of habit. This isn't about living in denial of past or future. You can learn from the past and plan for the future, but you do both from the ground of presence. You remember yesterday without drowning in it. You consider tomorrow without anxiety consuming you. The difference is where you're standing while you do it. Let's practice together for just a moment. Bring your attention to your breath right now. Not changing it, just feeling it. Notice one full breath, in and out. Now expand your awareness to include sounds around you. Whatever sounds are present, near or far, loud or quiet, just hearing them without labeling or judging. Now include body sensations, any areas of tension or ease, temperature, touch, the felt sense of being in a body, right here, right now. This is presence, this immediate, direct awareness of what is. It's always available, but we're usually somewhere else, lost in thought, planning, remembering, worrying, wanting. The more you practice returning to presence, the more you discover that freedom isn't somewhere else or sometime later. It's here, now, in the simple fact of being aware, being alive, meeting this moment without the filter of all your stories about how it should be different. And when you live from this place of presence more and more, everything begins to shift. Not because your circumstances change, but because your relationship to them transforms completely. If you're still with me, you're walking the path. You've traveled deep already, seen impermanence, craving, suffering's nature. The Buddha told his disciples, "I show you the path, but you must walk it yourself." What we explore now goes deeper still. Take a breath. We're going deeper now. There's a moment on the spiritual path that no one warns you about. Everything you thought you understood falls apart. The practices that once brought peace now feel empty. Your old life no longer fits, but the new one hasn't yet taken shape. You're suspended in a darkness that feels like falling. The Buddha knew this territory intimately. Before his awakening, Siddhartha left everything. Not just his palace and wealth, he left his identity, his purpose, his certainty about who he was and what life meant. He wandered for 6 years, trying every practice, every teacher, every method he could find, and nothing worked. He pushed his body to the edge of death through ascetic practices. He mastered profound meditation states, the jhanas, states of consciousness beyond ordinary experience. He could enter realms of infinite space, infinite consciousness, of neither perception nor non-perception. But when he came out of these states, suffering was still there, waiting. The jhanas are real states, not fantasy. Deep concentration can take you to extraordinary places, where the body seems to dissolve, where boundaries between self and space vanish, where consciousness expands beyond anything you thought possible. Siddhartha became a master of these states. His teachers praised him, told him he'd reached the highest attainments. But he knew something was missing. These sublime states were still conditioned, still temporary. He would enter them, abide in them for hours or days, then return to ordinary consciousness, and the fundamental problem of suffering remained untouched. It was like taking the most exquisite vacation, but then coming home to find your house still on fire. He could achieve the first jhana, a state of rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal from sensory experience. The second jhana, where even the mental activity of applied thought settled, leaving just unification of mind. The third jhana, where rapture faded into a deeper equanimity and contentment. The fourth jhana, perfect stillness, perfect equanimity, beyond pleasure and pain. But he didn't stop there. He entered the formless realms, the dimension of infinite space, where all form dissolved into spaciousness. Then the dimension of infinite consciousness, where even space disappeared into pure awareness. Then the dimension of nothingness, where even consciousness, as an object, vanished. Finally, the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, the most subtle state of consciousness possible. His teachers said this was the highest attainment, the pinnacle of spiritual achievement. But Siddhartha saw clearly, these were still conditioned states. Beautiful, peaceful, extraordinary, but not liberation. They arose, they passed away. The one who entered them and left them was still caught in becoming. This realization, that even the most sublime spiritual experiences aren't the answer, devastated him. If these weren't liberation, what was? Where else could he look? He'd tried everything. This is rarely talked about, that the Buddha's awakening came not after success, but after the complete collapse of everything he'd tried. He sat by that river, emaciated and exhausted, watching his reflection in the water, and realized he was no closer to freedom than when he'd begun. That moment of recognizing failure, of admitting, I don't know, that was the turning point. In Zen Buddhism, they call this Dai-gi, the great doubt. Not the small doubt that questions this teaching or that practice, but the doubt that questions everything, that strips away all certainties until you're standing naked in not knowing. Zen masters say that great doubt leads to great awakening, but you have to be willing to let everything crumble first. The crisis isn't a detour from the path, it is the path. Think about what happens when a snake sheds its skin. There's a period where the old skin has loosened, but the new one isn't fully formed. The snake is vulnerable, essentially between identities. But this vulnerable period is necessary. Without it, growth is impossible. You might be in such a period right now. Maybe you've lost something, a relationship, a job, a belief system that once gave your life meaning. Maybe you're questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself. Maybe the spiritual practices that once brought comfort now feel mechanical, empty. This isn't regression. This is deepening. There's a powerful story in the Buddhist scriptures about a man named Angulimala. His name means finger garland because he wore a necklace of human fingers, the fingers of people he'd killed. He was a serial murderer, terrorizing an entire region, hunting victims to reach 1,000 kills as some twisted spiritual practice. Angulimala had once been a promising student named Ahimsaka, the harmless one. His teacher, jealous of his abilities and wanting to destroy him, gave him a terrible instruction. He told Ahimsaka that to achieve spiritual perfection, he must kill 1,000 people and bring their fingers as proof. In his devotion and naivety, Ahimsaka believed this was a genuine spiritual teaching. He became Angulimala, the finger-garlanded one, and began his horrific path. By the time we meet him in the suttas, he's killed 999 people. He needs one more victim to complete his 1,000. The entire region lives in terror. Even his own mother was coming to warn him that the king's army was preparing to hunt him down. In his madness, Angulimala had decided she would be his 1,000th victim. One day, the Buddha walked deliberately into the forest where Angulimala hunted. People had warned him not to go. Entire caravans refused to travel that road. But the Buddha went anyway. Angulimala saw him and thought, "Perfect, my final victim." A monk, walking alone, apparently fearless. This will complete my practice. He grabbed his sword and ran after the Buddha. But something strange happened. No matter how fast Angulimala ran, he couldn't catch the Buddha, who appeared to be walking calmly, normally. Angulimala was a strong, fierce man in his prime. The Buddha was middle-aged, walking peacefully, yet the distance between them remained constant. This wasn't magic. It was Angulimala's own mind creating the distance. The Buddha's presence was so utterly different from anything Angulimala had encountered that it stopped him in his tracks, not physically but psychologically. For the first time in years, something penetrated his madness. Finally, Angulimala shouted, "Stop, monk!" The Buddha turned and said, I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped. What do you mean? Angulimala demanded. You're still walking. The Buddha replied, I have stopped harming living beings. I have stopped running from truth. I have stopped believing the delusions that create suffering. But you are still running, still caught in the cycle of harm, still believing in a false path. In that moment, everything Angulimala thought he knew shattered. He had been running from himself, from truth, from reality, his entire life. The Buddha's simple words pierced through years of delusion. Angulimala dropped his sword, fell at the Buddha's feet, and asked to be ordained as a monk. This is transformation through crisis, not gradual improvement, but complete collapse, followed by rebirth. Angulimala's entire identity, as a killer, as someone powerful through violence, as someone who could control life and death, all of it had to die before freedom was possible. The Buddhist texts don't sugarcoat what happened next. Angulimala became a monk, but people recognized him. They threw stones, struck him, spat on him. He had to face the consequences of his actions, even after his transformation. He would return from alms rounds with blood streaming down his face, his robes torn, his bowl broken. The Buddha told him to endure it patiently, that this was his karma ripening, that experiencing the results of his past actions was part of his path. And Angulimala did. He practiced with complete sincerity, never retaliating, never defending himself, accepting what came with equanimity. The texts say he eventually attained full liberation, becoming an arahant. His transformation was complete. The same is true for subtler forms of identity. Maybe you've built your sense of self around being successful, or being needed, or being right, or being spiritual. Whatever you've grasped at, whatever you've used to feel solid and real, the path will eventually ask you to release it. And that release feels like death. There's a Zen koan that says, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. This sounds shocking, even sacrilegious, but it's pointing to something crucial. You must even let go of your image of enlightenment, your ideas about what awakening should look like. As long as you're trying to become something, even trying to become awakened, there's still grasping, still suffering. The instruction to kill the Buddha means kill your concepts about the Buddha, your fantasies about what freedom looks like, your attachment to spiritual identity. True freedom has no image. It can't be grasped or defined, and you can only find it by letting go of everything you thought it was. This is why crisis is often the doorway. When everything falls apart, you can't hold on anymore. You're forced into the very letting go you've been avoiding. What feels like the end of your world is actually the beginning of freedom. But here's what's essential to understand. You're allowed to be lost. You're allowed to not know. You're allowed to feel like everything is falling apart. This isn't failure. This Is the path working? The Buddha himself spent 49 days under the Bodhi tree before his final awakening. Buddhist tradition describes how he was assailed by Mara, the personification of delusion, fear, doubt. Mara threw everything at him: temptation, terror, accusations of unworthiness. Mara said, "Who do you think you are to claim awakening? What right do you have? You're nobody. Nothing. Give up this foolish quest." The Buddha didn't fight Mara. He didn't argue or defend himself. He simply touched the earth and said, "I am here. The earth is my witness." That simple gesture of being present, of not fleeing or fighting, that was his victory. Your crisis, whatever form it takes, is your encounter with Mara. All your fears, all your doubts, all your shadows, they come into the light, and your only job is to stay present with them, to touch the earth, to say, "I am here," even when you don't know what comes next. On the other side of the dark night is a dawn you can't imagine from within the darkness. But you have to trust the process. You have to let the old self die, not because something is wrong, but because something is finally, deeply right. And what you discover in that darkness is something the Buddha taught explicitly. There's a natural order to things, a rhythm you can trust even when you can't see it. The Buddha didn't claim to create his teachings. He said he discovered them, like someone finding an ancient path overgrown in the forest, a path that was always there, waiting to be walked again. He called this natural law Dhamma, the way things actually are, independent of belief or opinion. Not a divine command handed down from heaven, but the inherent nature of reality itself. In one discourse, the Buddha said, "Whether Buddhas arise or not, this law stands." This stability of the Dhamma, this orderliness of the Dhamma, that all formations are impermanent, that all formations are suffering, that all phenomena are without self. The Tathagata awakens to this and breaks through to it. Having done so, he explains, teaches, proclaims, establishes, discloses, analyzes, and elucidates it. Think about gravity. Gravity isn't a rule someone invented. It's how the universe works. You can deny it. You can be ignorant of it. You can try to fight it, but it keeps operating. The Dhamma is like that. These teachings about impermanence, about dependent origination, about the nature of suffering and its end, they're not beliefs you adopt. They're descriptions of how reality actually functions. The Buddha said his awakening was seeing the Dhamma clearly, seeing the natural law that governs all conditioned existence. And once you see it, you can work with it instead of against it. Everything in nature follows its own timing, its own rhythm. Seeds don't sprout because you're impatient. Trees don't bear fruit before their season. Rain doesn't fall because you need it. It falls when conditions are right. This is svabhava, the inherent nature of things, the way each phenomenon unfolds, according to its own character. A mango tree produces mangoes, not apples. It can't be rushed or forced to produce something other than what it is. A mango seed carries within it the entire blueprint for a mango tree, the height it will reach, the shape of its leaves, the sweetness of its fruit. You can provide good soil, adequate water, sufficient sunlight. These conditions help the tree flourish. But you cannot make it grow faster than its nature allows. You cannot force it to bear fruit in winter if its nature is to fruit in summer. This seems obvious when we talk about trees, but we forget it when it comes to our own lives. We try to force ourselves to be something we're not, to produce results before their time, to skip necessary stages of development. Your life follows these natural rhythms too, whether you recognize them or not. You can't force insight to arrive before its time. You can't rush healing. You can't skip the necessary stages of growth. What you can do is create conditions, remove obstacles, and then trust the process. There's a teaching about a farmer who planted seeds and then, anxious to see results, went out each day and pulled on the shoots to make them grow faster. Of course, all the plants died. His impatience destroyed what patience would have nurtured. This parable appears in several Asian wisdom traditions because it captures something so essential about working with natural law. The farmer wasn't wrong to want growth, that's natural. He wasn't wrong to check on his crops, that's responsible farming. His mistake was thinking he could override the plant's own timing, that his anxiety mattered more than the natural unfolding of life. The farmer's error came from not trusting the seed's inherent intelligence. Inside that seed is everything needed for growth: the genetic code, the stored energy, the ability to respond to conditions. The seed knows how to become a plant. The farmer's job isn't to make it grow, but to create the conditions in which growth naturally occurs. How often do you do this in your own life? Pulling on the shoots, trying to force outcomes, rushing processes that need time. The Dhamma asks you to recognize that some things simply cannot be rushed. The seed has its own intelligence. Your only job is to tend the soil, provide water, allow sunlight, and then step back. This is especially true with karma. The Buddha taught that karma ripens in its own time. Some karma ripens quickly. You touch fire, you get burned. The connection between action and result is immediate and obvious. Some karma takes years, or even lifetimes to mature. The connection isn't obvious, but it's there. The Buddha described 4 types of karmic ripening. First, karma that ripens in this very life, actions whose results you experience soon after doing them. You speak harshly to someone and immediately see the hurt in their eyes and feel the contraction in your own heart. Second, karma that ripens in the next life, results that won't manifest until future circumstances arise. Third, karma that ripens in subsequent lives, very long-term consequences that require specific conditions to mature. Fourth, karma that becomes ineffective, actions whose conditions for ripening never come together, like seeds that fall on stone. You can't force it or predict it or control when and how it manifests. All you can do is plant good seeds now and trust that they'll bear fruit when conditions are right. The Buddha revealed something profound about time itself. He said there are 4 kinds of people: those who go from darkness to darkness, those who go from darkness to light, those who go from light to darkness, and those who go from light to light. But he emphasized that no one's trajectory is fixed. Change is always possible because everything follows the law of cause and effect, not fate. Someone who has lived harmfully their whole life can change course. Their past actions will still have consequences. That's the natural law. But they can begin creating different causes right now. Angulimala is proof of this. He went from the darkest darkness, a serial killer, to complete liberation in a single lifetime. Not because his past karma disappeared, but because he created such powerful new karma through sincere practice that it transformed his entire trajectory. Conversely, someone who has lived well can become complacent, can start creating unwholesome karma, can go from light to darkness. The Buddha warned about this repeatedly. Spiritual attainments can be lost if not maintained. Good character can erode if not tended. Nothing is guaranteed except the law itself. Actions have consequences. You're not trapped by your past, but you also can't bypass it. The conditions you've created are real, and they influence your present. The path forward isn't about denying those conditions or pretending they don't exist. It's about understanding them, working with them, gradually shifting the momentum in a new direction. This requires patience, one of the most undervalued qualities on the spiritual path. Not passive waiting, but active, engaged patience. Tending your practice day by day, even when you don't see results. Maintaining integrity in your actions, even when the benefits aren't immediate. Trusting that causes ripen into effects in their own time. The natural law doesn't care about your timeline or your plans, but it responds perfectly to conditions. When you align with the Dhamma instead of fighting it, everything becomes easier, not because life stops presenting challenges, but because you stop adding unnecessary struggle. You begin to sense the rightness of things as they are, even when they're difficult. You begin to feel the current of natural law carrying you, and you learn to swim with it instead of against it. This is what the Buddha meant by liberation. Not escape from reality, but profound alignment with it. And when you understand this, you start to see something even more fundamental, that your experience of reality is shaped by your mind in ways you've never fully recognized. The very first verses of the Dhammapada say, "Mind precedes all phenomena. Mind matters most. Everything is mind-made. If you speak or act with a corrupted mind, suffering follows, as the wagon wheel follows the hoof of the ox. But if you speak or act with a serene mind, happiness follows, like a shadow that never leaves. This isn't saying that physical reality doesn't exist, or that you can manifest whatever you want through positive thinking. The Buddha wasn't teaching some ancient version of the law of attraction. He was pointing to something more subtle and more profound. Your mind creates your experience of reality. Two people can be in the exact same situation and have completely different experiences of it. One person stuck in traffic feels rage and frustration. Another person in the same traffic feels patient and at ease. The external conditions are identical. What differs is the mind meeting those conditions. The Buddha taught about saṃsāra, mental formations, the ways your mind constructs and interprets experience. Every moment, your mind is taking raw sensory input and weaving it into a story, a meaning, an emotional flavor. Most of this happens unconsciously, automatically, based on past conditioning. But it's not fixed. You can learn to see this process and work with it. Consider two people walking through a forest at dusk. They both see the same coiled shape on the path ahead. One person's mind immediately constructs snake, and fear arises. Heart racing, muscles tensing, ready to flee. The other person's mind constructs rope, and there's no fear, just neutral observation. When they get closer and see it's actually a rope, both were experiencing mental formations, not objective reality. The first person's suffering was real, but it was created entirely by their mind's interpretation. The Buddha used this exact example in his teachings, the rope and the snake, to show how perception works. The rope isn't inherently frightening. The snake that was imagined never existed, but the fear was absolutely real, creating physical reactions, emotional turmoil, maybe even traumatic memory. All from the mind's construction. There's a story about a king who wanted to walk barefoot everywhere, but found the ground too rough and painful. He decided to have all the roads in his kingdom covered with soft leather so his feet would be comfortable. The cost would be enormous. The project would take years, and still he couldn't cover every path, every forest trail, every rocky outcrop in his entire kingdom. His wise minister suggested a simpler solution. Why not just wrap leather around your own feet? And thus, shoes were invented. This is what working with the mind means. You can't control the whole world, can't make everything comfortable, can't prevent all difficulty, but you can change how you meet what comes. You can transform your relationship with experience by transforming your mind. The Buddha called this changing your diṭṭhī, your view, the lens through which you see everything. Right view, the first aspect of the Eightfold Path, isn't about having correct beliefs. It's about seeing clearly without the distortions of craving, aversion, and delusion. When your view changes, everything changes. You're still in the same body, the same circumstances, but your experience is fundamentally different. This is how inner transformation manifests as outer change, not by altering external conditions, but by altering the mind that experiences those conditions. The Buddha taught that there are 10 fetters, 10 chains that bind us to suffering. The first 3 are identity view, doubt, and clinging to rites and rituals. All 3 are fundamentally about wrong view, about seeing reality through a distorted lens. When these first 3 fetters are broken, you become a stream enterer, someone who has entered the stream that flows inevitably toward liberation. This happens not through years of practice necessarily, but through a shift in seeing. Identity view means believing in a permanent, unchanging self. When you see clearly that what you call I is actually a process, not a thing, a flowing river, not a solid rock, the first fetter breaks. Doubt means uncertainty about the path, about whether practice actually works. When you see the truth directly, even once, doubt dissolves. Clinging to rites and rituals means believing that external practices alone bring liberation, without understanding the transformation of mind they're meant to support. Take a moment right now and notice one mental formation. Maybe it's a judgment about something, this is good, or this is bad. Maybe it's a story about yourself, I'm the kind of person who. Maybe it's an assumption about how things should be. Just notice it. See how your mind is actively constructing your experience moment by moment. When you see this clearly, a profound freedom becomes possible. You're no longer trapped by your thoughts because you see them as thoughts, not as absolute truth. You're no longer buffeted by every emotion because you recognize emotions as weather patterns in the mind, not your identity. This doesn't make you passive or indifferent. It makes you responsive instead of reactive. You can still engage fully with life, but from a place of clarity rather than confusion. And as you deepen in this understanding, you begin to see that you're not walking this path alone. The Buddha's attendant, Ananda, once said to him, "Venerable Sir, spiritual friendship is half of the spiritual life." The Buddha corrected him immediately. "Not so, Ananda. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the spiritual life." This isn't what most people expect to hear about enlightenment. We imagine solitary monks meditating in caves, isolated seekers, finding truth alone. But the Buddha taught that we awaken in relationship, through relationship, because of relationship. The Buddha himself learned from teachers. Before his awakening, he studied under Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta, 2 meditation masters who taught him profound concentration practices. He didn't achieve final liberation with them, but their teachings were essential steps on his path. He honored these teachers throughout his life, acknowledging that his awakening was built on what they'd shared. When Alara Kalama died, the Buddha spoke of him with deep respect, saying that if his teacher had lived to hear the full teaching, he would have understood quickly and attained liberation. This is humility, recognizing that even the awakened one built his understanding on foundations laid by others. No one walks this path in complete isolation. Even the Buddha, after his awakening, immediately sought out his 5 former companions to share what he'd discovered. For 45 years, he taught, establishing the Sangha, the community of practitioners. He knew that liberation is realized individually, but supported collectively. The Buddha described the Sangha as one of the 3 jewels, along with the Buddha and the Dhamma, essential refuges on the path. Taking refuge in the Sangha doesn't mean depending on others for your awakening, but recognizing that the journey requires support, guidance, and the mirror of relationship. Think about the people in your life right now. Each one is a teacher, whether they know it or not, whether you recognize it or not. The friend who listens without judgment teaches you about compassion. The difficult family member teaches you about patience and boundaries. The stranger whose kindness surprises you teaches you about the goodness possible in human nature. Even those who hurt you are teachers. This doesn't mean you should stay in harmful relationships or accept mistreatment, but you can acknowledge that difficult people show you your edges, your reactive patterns, your unhealed places. They give you the opportunity to practice what the Buddha taught in ways that easy relationships never could. Kalyāṇa-mittatā means noble friendship, spiritual friendship, relationship based on mutual support for awakening. It's not about people liking each other or sharing interests. It's about helping each other stay awake, stay honest, stay on the path, even when it's difficult. The Buddha described 4 qualities of a spiritual friend. They restrain you from wrongdoing. They encourage you toward good. They teach you what you haven't heard. And they point out the path to liberation. These aren't people who tell you what you want to hear. They're people who tell you what you need to hear, with kindness but also with honesty. True spiritual friendship involves both support and challenge. A real friend won't let you fool yourself, won't enable your delusions, won't pretend everything is fine when you're creating suffering for yourself or others. But they also won't judge you, won't abandon you in difficulty, won't use your vulnerabilities against you. This balance is rare and precious. The Buddha also taught about admirable friendship versus harmful companionship. Harmful companions lead you toward unwholesome actions, reinforce your delusions, encourage your worst tendencies. Admirable friends inspire you toward virtue, reflect your best qualities, challenge you to grow. One of the most important choices on the path is choosing your companions wisely. Not everyone stays in your life forever, and that's okay. Some people are with you for years, walking the whole path alongside you. Others appear for a single conversation, a brief moment of connection that shifts something fundamental, and then they're gone. Both are equally valuable. The Buddha taught to let go with gratitude. When someone's part in your journey is complete, you don't need to cling or feel abandoned. You can appreciate what was shared and release them to their own path. This is love without attachment, honoring the connection while accepting its natural arc. And you, too, are someone's teacher. Whether you intend it or not, your presence in others' lives matters. The way you speak, the choices you make, the quality of attention you bring, all of this affects those around you. You're part of the web of spiritual friendship, offering support even when you don't realize it. The Sangha, in its deepest sense, isn't just the community of monks or even of Buddhists. It's everyone genuinely walking toward freedom, toward truth, toward love, and recognizing each other on that path, supporting each other, learning from each other. This is how the teaching stays alive, generation after generation. But ultimately, even the best teachers and friends can only point the way. The final step of the journey requires something else entirely, a profound letting go. There comes a point on the path when you have to release even your grip on the path itself. The Buddha told a parable about a raft. Imagine you need to cross a great river. You build a raft from logs and branches, and it carries you safely to the other shore. Once you've crossed, would you pick up the raft and carry it on your back for the rest of your journey? Of course not. You'd leave it behind, grateful for its service, but understanding its purpose is complete. The Buddha said, when you know the Dhamma to be similar to a raft, you should abandon even good teachings. How much more so, bad ones? This is radical. He's saying that even his own teachings are tools to be used and released, not truths to be grasped forever. This is Vossagga, relinquishment, the complete letting go that isn't loss, but liberation. It's not that you throw everything away recklessly or abandon your practice. It's that you hold everything lightly enough that nothing binds you. You can use tools without becoming attached to them. You can follow teachings without clinging to them as identity. You can practice without the practice becoming another form of grasping. There's a famous Zen story about a student who came to a master with a teacup, asking to be filled with wisdom. The master began pouring tea and kept pouring even as the cup filled and overflowed, tea spilling everywhere. The student cried out, "Stop! The cup is full." The master replied, "Like this cup, you are full of your own ideas and opinions. How can I show you anything unless you first empty your cup?" This koan appears in verified Zen collections, and it points to something essential about learning and transformation. You can't receive new understanding if you're full of old certainties. You can't see clearly if you're convinced you already know how things are. Vossagga is emptying the cup again and again. But emptying isn't the same as throwing away thoughtlessly. It's more like composting. You release what you've been holding, but you do so with care and attention, allowing it to transform into something that nourishes new growth. The Buddha taught that you should cling to nothing, not to views, not to practices, not to states of consciousness, not even to the idea of enlightenment. The moment you grasp at anything, even something good and wholesome, you've created the conditions for suffering. This is perhaps the most paradoxical teaching. You have to practice diligently, but without attachment to results. You have to follow the path sincerely, but without clinging to being on a path. You have to develop wisdom, but then release even your attachment to being wise. Think of it like training a wild horse. If you're too forceful, the horse rebels. If you're too loose, the horse runs wild. You need firmness and gentleness together, guidance without domination. Eventually, horse and rider move as one, and there's no sense of forcing or controlling, just natural, harmonious movement. The Buddha used another image. He said, "Right effort is like holding a bird. If you grip too tight, you'll crush it. If you hold too loosely, it will fly away." You need just enough presence to maintain connection without creating harm. That's the quality of Vossagga. Present, but not grasping. Engaged, but not clinging. That's what Vossagga allows. A natural movement through life without the constant tension of grasping and pushing away. The freedom this creates is unlike anything else. It's not the freedom to do whatever you want. That's just slavery to impulse. It's the freedom of having nothing to defend, nothing to prove, nothing to become. You can engage fully with life precisely because you're not trying to extract security from it. The Buddha taught about different stages of letting go. First, you let go of obvious harmful things, actions that create suffering for yourself and others. Then you let go of subtle attachments, preferences, opinions, the need to be right. Then you let go of good things that still bind you, even wholesome states of mind if you're clinging to them. Finally, you let go of letting go itself. You release the one who's releasing until there's just open, free awareness with no center point. Right now, in this moment, you can practice this. Take one thing you're holding, maybe an idea about yourself, maybe a plan for the future, maybe a belief you've been defending, maybe even your understanding of these teachings. Can you release your grip, just slightly? Not reject it, not throw it away, just hold it a bit more lightly. Notice what happens when you do. There might be fear, the fear that if you don't hold tight, everything will fall apart. But underneath that fear is something else, a vast openness, a kind of peace that doesn't depend on controlling anything. This openness is your true nature, not something you need to create or achieve, but something you uncover by releasing what covers it. Like the sky that's always there behind the clouds, you don't create the sky by clearing the clouds. You simply reveal what was always present. The Buddha's last words to his disciples were, "All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence." Even at the moment of death, he didn't give them something to cling to, some final, absolute truth to grasp. He pointed them back to the practice, back to their own effort, back to the truth of impermanence itself. This is the ultimate teaching of Vossagga. Everything passes, everything changes, everything must be released, eventually. Even your life, even this moment, even the one reading or listening to these words. Everything arises, abides briefly, and dissolves. And in that truth, paradoxically, is perfect peace. Because when you finally stop fighting impermanence, when you release your desperate grip on what cannot be held, you discover that you don't need to hold anything at all. You can rest in the flow, trusting the natural law, knowing that you're part of something vast and perfect, exactly as it is. This is freedom, not somewhere else, not in some future moment, not after you've achieved or understood or become anything. Here, now, in the simple act of releasing your grip and allowing life to be as it is. The path has brought you here, to this moment, to this understanding, and now, perhaps, you can see that there was never anywhere to go. You were always already home. The journey was just the way of recognizing what you never actually left. Everything arises from causes and conditions. Nothing is by chance, because everything follows natural law. And yet, nothing is predetermined, because new causes create new conditions, moment by moment. This is the dance of freedom, working with what is while creating what will be, grounded in understanding, moved by compassion, released from the need to control. The Buddha's final invitation stands, "Be a lamp unto yourself." Trust your own practice, your own understanding, your own awakening. The path is here. The truth is here. Freedom is here. And you, walking this path, being this presence, living this truth, you are already whole. You are not the same person who began this journey. Something has shifted, even if it's subtle. The Buddha taught that everything arises from causes and conditions, and in these hours together, new conditions have been created, new understanding has taken root. Nothing is by chance. Everything follows the natural law of causation. That you're here now, listening to these final words. This too arose from countless causes, stretching back through time. The Buddha's last words to his disciples were simple and profound. Be a lamp unto yourself. Don't look outside for what can only be found within. The wisdom you've encountered today wasn't foreign to you. It was your own Buddha nature recognizing itself. And the practice continues, not as burden, but as path, not as something to complete, but as a way of living,